Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Park Recreation Greenway Advisory Committee meeting. February 17th, 2020. We do have a quorum, and I call this meeting to order. I need a motion for the approved minutes from the last meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written from the last meeting.
I have a motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, just so everyone knows, at 7 p.m. after this, we're going to have a Park and Recreation meeting. This particular, right here, this particular time is going to be going over the master plan from Reagan and Smith. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to those gentlemen if anybody has no objections.
I just want to get started on some of it.
I think it'll happen. Is that thing on? There it is.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman Noor, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. We have a very brief presentation. We're just giving a quick update on some things. I think one of the things we want to make sure and do is highlight that March 10th. Do I get the date right, Matt? Does that sound right?
March 10th.
Yes. March 10th is a public open house. We want to promote that date and get as much attendance as we can. That's when we're going to really unveil a lot of the recommendations. We've been talking a lot about inventory and what we've been hearing and getting some general ideas, and that at that meeting we'll get into some details that we'll be very excited about. So we want to make sure that that is well announced, and we're looking forward to that. This evening we have a very quick summary of, I'll pass out what information we've gotten on our survey so far, and then Mr. Hamilton here is going to discuss a little bit about kind of our inventory map and where we see some initial needs assessments.
While he's handing those out, I'd just like to ask everybody here, I seen where Parks and Rec, I'm assuming Kathy does that, puts it on social media about that March the 10th thing, wherever that comes from. I'm not sure who writes it. Maybe Ann.
Robert did it this last time.
Okay. Other than that, and a few things that we put out there as members, and this is nothing against Jerry, but I absolutely despise the fact that we can't get Channel 3 up and running because a lot of people don't have social media and stuff, so I don't really know how to reach everybody, but we need to somehow find a way to really advertise that. If you have any suggestions or I've seen a little bit of it on Facebook. I put it on there a couple times, but so we need to really start pushing that because I'd love for you to have a packed house. I'd love for you to have to answer a bunch of questions.
Yes, sir.
I think that's good. I think that's good business.
Right, yes, sir. So what you have in front of you is just a summary of the online survey that we've been taking. It's an ongoing thing, so here again, if you can promote this, get people to recognize if they go to the website for the Park and Recreation Department here in Laverne, there'll be a link right on that front page to take this survey. The survey is a compilation of some data that was collected before and then some current information. So I'm going to very quickly highlight, I think, some of the things that we noticed right off the bat. There is a lot of people that have lived in Laverne for a while, and that's kind of reflected in the report. There's a good use of family mixture of ages that are using the parks. That's no surprise. If you go to, it would be your 5th page in, where people visit parks. Veterans Memorial continues to be your flagship park and is very well attended, very well used. That's all very good in that there's a mixture of activities there. And one more reason to, I think, as we've noticed in the report, there's a lot of talk about making sure to maintain and keep up facilities like Veterans Park and make sure that there's an operating and maintenance budget. We've talked about stacking a few more functions in the Veterans, possibly something like disc golf, pickleball, those kind of things. But the other thing you'll notice on this page is some of the smaller parks maybe don't get quite as attended. I think there's a need to make sure to strengthen and promote neighborhood parks throughout Laverne. And when I say that, not just existing parks, but future parks. And Matt's going to talk about that in the map a little bit. So the other thing that is very well loved is the Greenway. I think we've all recognized that. I think any ways we can expand the Greenway and extend Greenway into other parts of the community would be something that would really be well worth the investment. On the page following that, you'll see as far as events that people enjoy, Old Timers Festival and the parade, still take the top as far as what people attend and participate in. And what I would suggest is that there's an opportunity for the city to maybe add one or two more events that are like that same level of activity, that's so well attended, it's so recognized, and that would be something that I think you could look for other activities that would reach that same caliber. The farmers market has been a real big success. I think that's something that we've seen in the survey. If you follow to the next page on what people would like to see, we've heard a lot of talk about splash pads. We know that has a lot of interest, but at the same time, high level of cost, high level of maintenance and supervision. There's been interest in a lot, the dog park. I know that there's right now currently discussion. I think Mr. Simon had mentioned he'd like to see something happen. I think that might be something that happens rather quickly. And I think we're looking into the possibility of actually designing and implementing a 3-acre dog park. So that was something, yes, sir.
To the next page, you're down towards the bottom. You
Yes.
got the block party, and you got a 2 there. That was a pretty big hit when we done it this past year. We had a lot of attendance there. Why is it rated so low?
I can only say that people responded to the survey for whatever reasons. This is right now, I think we've got a sample of about 187 people.
Those people that may have responded may not have come to that event. That block party was this was the first time we tried that, and we got 2 hours in and got hit with bad weather. So that may have kept some of the people away, and some of these respondents, may not have been aware of that. So,
But we had a big turnout.
yeah, it was a good turnout, but like I said, if you didn't take the survey and you didn't come to that event, then that wouldn't reflect on this
Oh,
graph.
okay.
One of the things that we like to do is make sure to evaluate these matrices from more than one direction. So things like the survey are part of what we use, but we're also going to use things like the demand map, continued input from the open house we'll have. We'll use NRPA standards as a measuring stick. So we don't like to just rely on one tool as the only way to measure. As far as what people would like to see, back to that next page, what is interesting is that nature hikes and walks and the Greenway, there again, very high level. The dog park was a very high level. And I think there's an opportunity for more youth camps and education. We've talked about that, possibility expanding the soccer league and creating a soccer league. What's interesting, there's not a whole lot of respondents that have answered this question yet, but a vast majority of people that did said that they would be very interested in having access to a park just by walking or biking. And that kind of connects to the idea that the Greenway extensions and spurs become very important. And you'll see that in that next question too, below the pie chart, which says more connections to neighborhood parks was something very important. I think that this might even kind of tie into operating and maintenance a little bit in terms of people feeling safe in the park. There wasn't a whole lot who said they did not feel safe. but there was a fair number who were in the kind of in between level. And I think sometimes that's even can be a reflection of like if they feel like the maintenance is down or there's not as many people out in the park. That'd just be something for us to keep our eye on. And then the last 2 pages are just gender and ethnicity. So that's just a quick summary. As I said, this is ongoing. Yes, Ms. Tyson?
I apologize, I have not filled out this survey yet, but I intend to. But my question is, I know that Mr. Simon has advocated for, gosh, probably decades now for a community center. Did you ask that, if people want to see a community center?
I know that we have had a high response with other tools that we've asked about a community center. I don't know that that was part of this original question, and that is a good point.
I don't remember seeing it on that.
Right.
Do you happen to have a copy of it with you, Kathy, by chance?
I don't,
Okay.
but all the fields that they have on this report are the questions off the actual survey.
Okay, that's what I
So,
thought.
I
Didn't remember
I
seeing.
think that's a
community
good point. I think we could add that. I know that this survey right now is using the city software, so we can get together with city staff, and I think that's a very valid point to add that to one of the uses that people might like to see.
And one of the reasons I'm asking that is I understand that the land purchase has been made, and someone had been told that part of the purchase thought of it was to build a community center, so it sounds like it's something that they really, the mayor may really want
Right.
to see.
No, we have
But
recognized.
he can speak for himself.
Right, we've recognized actually, when you're looking out 10 to 20 years, I think Laverne definitely needs to look for some type of community center that could be implemented. So we need to find out a little bit more about where that's targeted. I think we've got some ideas on this map, but it is definitely one of the things that has shown up on the radar.
Thank you.
Yes. All right,
So
with that-
again, I think this, I don't even remember whose idea it was to come up with the survey, but I thought it was a great idea. But there again, how in the world can we get people to participate? Because according to this, just like would you walk or bike, you had 21 people.
Right, we need to try to continue to really promote the survey as much as we can. And that can be done a lot of times, even just pretty much any public meeting that's held here at City Hall, if you just mention that, and it gets, when people go to watch the recorded sessions, that's a good way. I know we've promoted it that way. As well as everybody if you want to send that link, send out an email blast. We could probably work on some kind of email blast, I believe, with the city staff. That might help as well.
Has this been added into, I can't think of what it's called, the little community newsletter that goes out in each water bill?
That would be a good way
We've
to
used
get
that
it
as a
out.
very successful
so.
tool in the past, is actually put it in the water bills, because that goes out.
Do you know?
Okay.
I don't believe
I
it
haven't
has.
seen it in there.
Yeah, if that goes to every household in the
Right.
city, that'd be a great tool.
Right.
What about that little monthly thing that lays up there on the counter? What is that called? That little letter for the city, what's going on in the city up there?
Is that something that Ann does, like just the
Yeah.
city newsletter?
She does do a monthly newsletter.
Yeah. I think, was that what you were talking about in the water bill?
Yeah, I'm drawing no, it's laying up there on the,
Just like the, yeah, I mean, I think it's just like the city newsletter, whatever it is that Ann puts out.
I'd have to go out there and get it to even tell you the name of it. That's about how my
Is
brain's.
it the Chronicle?
Yeah, something Chronicle.
That's right, yeah, the Laverne Chronicle. I think all of this, in my opinion, is the bottom line, is just getting it out there somehow, the best way.
Well, if city staff is open to it, we could explore the idea of attaching to the water bill. We've done that in other communities, and it's actually been pretty successful. We could at least examine that possibility.
Put it on the sign out front, too. Maybe.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make yard signs and have people put it in their yards all through the
City
area.
right-of-ways,
Huh?
commonly traveled roads, anywhere
Yeah.
that's highly visible.
Lots
I
of
mean,
options.
The demographic data shows that we're only targeting niche markets for this marketing. I mean, you look at Caucasians compared to every other represented group. We're obviously hitting some markets, but it's not universal enough. We're not
Right,
bringing
I
in the
agree.
full demographic, because that's
Right.
not at all what Laverne is like. We have to bring in everyone.
Well, those are all pretty good ideas. I think we can continue to discuss those and try to find some ways to promote, get as much survey data as we can. Okay, Matt, can you talk about the maps?
So here on the map, we've taken the live, work, play that we've shown you in the past, and we've started to identify some areas of acquisition for, it could be a community center, it could be community parks, it could be Greenway expansion, it could be for the community center. And we started to identify those mainly towards the southwest part of town, around 24, because that area is lacking really anything at this point other than Brookside Park. And we've also identified the opportunities there to connect to Cane Ridge Park. Since it's sitting right there, but there's really no access, so Greenway access would be a great opportunity to make that. We've also identified on the northeast side, up towards Lake Forest, you got a high density area up there, and there's really only one park there, so obviously a good spot for another neighborhood park. And we also identified one centrally located, just makes sense because it's centrally located towards everyone. And we're wanting to also promote connections between parks through greenways and trail connections. And one of those being to Cane Ridge and also out to Percy Priest. That's kind of where we're at right now. We're hoping to get some feedback on what we have for the open house. Do you have anything to add, Kevin?
Actually, I'm a big fan of that Greenway connection to Cane Ridge Park.
Yeah.
That place gets packed almost every day of the week with
Yeah.
various sports practices. They have a great sportsplex, so finding a way to bring us
Yeah.
together
And
is
sitting
going
right
to
there,
increase
too.
people using that park, and then they can connect to other ways.
Sure.
Beautiful country back there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great for trails.
I think one of the things, we've been looking at National Recreation and Park Standards, and based on population size, we probably need to see some pretty good acquisitions of some acreage to meet, what's typically considered that national standard. Now, there again, that's always a snapshot, and every community is different. I don't like to say that's something to use as a capital improvement plan. It's something that just gives you one more way to measure. But one of the things that those NRPA standards don't consider are the fact that you've got all this core land right adjacent to the city. So you have a very high amount of, state and natural area that's accessible. So it's not like you've got to purchase a lot of land for that. I think one of the things we're recognizing is these areas in the red circles that you see. There's really a need for the smaller, neighborhood parks. And somewhere, in the next 10 to 20 years, it would really be good to identify that place for the community center. That would be kind of another hub, similar to Veterans Park as far as the number of people that would use it.
What does acquisition area mean?
That's just, the idea is that you will have certain areas within the city, and we don't ever like to target exact properties, because with that can come like the idea of speculation or the value, but we're going to try to identify some areas that if property is available from whatever means, whether it be donation, using fees, developers who might be willing to contribute something, that those are the areas where you want to try to acquire land for the future, because it only gets more expensive. And even if you acquire the land, and it just maybe becomes open play area, that doesn't mean that you have to build a community center at the same time, but once you've acquired the land, then it becomes really a target. You can program that land over, the next 10 to 20 years.
Thank you.
So, you've got a full agenda tonight. If there's no more questions, we can,
What's your time frame on finishing this?
I believe we come out at the other end in, I know March was open house, July. I think at the end of July, we'll be presenting, and I don't have our full schedule with us, I apologize, but end of July is when
I just
we're-
know we had talked several months ago, I'd asked April 1st as a deadline for the local Parks and Recreation Fund
Right,
grant.
right.
And you'd made a comment, someone said you might be able to get a preliminary
Yes.
master plan done for
Yes.
that. So I guess my next question is the city going to apply for it? It's a 50-50 match. You can get up to $500,000. I know there's not a grant writer here at this point. I say I know, but I don't know for sure. But I'd really like to see the city apply for that matching grant. If you're gonna bring these improvements, let our real estate transfer taxes pay for part of them.
And not to mention, you can use that for land acquisition.
Yes, you can.
Correct. Yeah, by April, we'll have a preliminary,
And April 1st, I think, is about the deadline. So,
and we can even start discussions of, if you're pursuing a grant, we can start figuring out some ways to focus in on that a little bit.
and I think that'll
even
be
if
up
it's
to the
not-
Board of Mayor and Aldermen to decide if they're going to pursue it or not. But I know there are a lot of really talented people who work here at the city, even without a grant writer, who could work to make it happen.
Sometimes you don't get it the first year. A lot of times, the key is if you keep applying and you've got the plan, like we talked about, casting that vision, and then keep retelling the story. Many times, if you don't get one the first year, the second year or third year, you will. So,
It comes
start-
open every 2 years, and if you get one project complete, you can apply for another one the
Right.
next year. That's what I
right,
hope to see.
you gotta complete whatever you've got.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to see the city take advantage of free money as much as they can. April 1st.
I don't think we have a grant writer yet.
You don't think what?
I don't think we've got a grant writer yet.
But that's why I said, you've got people like Bruce, who's an extremely talented writer. He could.
Do we have one yet, David? I don't even.
We don't have one yet. We're exploring that within our department. Kathy's been doing some research on it. I don't think it's opened up yet. I think the closing date is probably, I don't know if it's April 1st, maybe mid to late April. But we have got to get some passwords so we can actually get into that system. Because as of right now, we don't have access to that. So we've got to track down who's got the passwords that will actually let us in there so we can explore that stuff. But she is right, it's only available every 2 years.
And you do need to keep up, if you are going to do that, there are typically some prerequisite requirements that you are mandatory that you have to watch, so just keep an eye on that.
Like I said, as far as we're aware, that hasn't opened up yet. As of last Thursday, we didn't have an opening date on it. It may have opened up today and we're not aware of it.
Pulled it this morning. It's not open yet.
It's
She
not
told
gonna
me within a couple of weeks when I spoke to her.
Talking about the grant. Yeah, but you need to be working on it prior to, because there's a lot of Ts to cross and I's to
And
dot
what we're
out.
running into now, unless we have access to that system, we don't really know what their requirements are.
I can give you a copy of it. I have access.
That'd be awesome.
I'd be glad to. I'll print out a copy and scan it and send it to you.
Okay, so we're looking forward to coming back March 10th and having a lot more to discuss. And in the meantime, anybody if you can suggest they go to the website and click on that survey, that'd be appreciated.
You said Bruce could.
I do have
do
one
something
question
maybe?
for you.
Yes.
Of course.
I noticed the
Happy to.
timing for the March 10th a public forum is 5:30 to 7. So are people just free? Because I know some people won't be getting home from work that might work in Nashville at that time. So are they free to just stop in at any time during that period?
Right, that's a good question. It is an open house, so it's not like you have to be there for the entire session, and you can come and go as you please.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank
Right.
you.
David, Kathy's saying Bruce has pretty knowledge. Have you presented anything to him?
He was out last week, so when we started exploring it was last week to trying to find the dates and what we needed to get to. He was on vacation last week, so we expect him to be back tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
You'll be in touch with him?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that really what you can do, and it'll have to go before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, but all you've got to do is flip over to the pages where what they want, what the public wants, and then go from there. Splash pad, you got 86%. Under that is expand the Greenway. That'd be a great actually, that's a second grant you could apply for also, the Trailway grant. So there's 2 of them up right now. Sunshade structure for the playgrounds, that's really big. You could get the grant money to pay for all of that. Even if you're not ready to build a park or a community center, there's a lot you can do.
Well, most, right, as you mentioned, most of the grants are, like you target, and they've really increased the cap on that, which is good. But you can, target 500,000 and you can do pretty significant work with that. But then again, that's obviously not gonna build a community center, but
Right.
if you
right.
wanted to expand the Greenway, add shade structures,
But yeah, don't let the grant get away, this grant cycle, because again, if you want to expand the Greenway, there's that Trailways grant, and then if you wanted to add the shade structures or whatever, apply for that. Look and see what's in the budget in the next 2 years for Parks and Rec, and aim it toward what you've already budgeted for your matching part. Just suggesting,
Oh, I'm listening.
yeah. Yeah, just take a look at
The
the
mayor's
budget.
here, he's listening too, eh? All right.
All right, any more questions for these gentlemen?
thank you.
Fellas, I guess we'll see you on March the 10th.
Yes, sir.
And we'll keep advertising and try to get people there and see what we come up with.
Okay, appreciate that.
No, we
Guys doing
appreciate
a
it.
great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments before I adjourn this portion?
I would like to see, after reviewing how long this survey has been up and the amount of people, it is a definite, we need to look at different modes of advertising this. Signage is a good way, put it up in our, put it at the senior center, make it available at all of our different athletic programs that are available. Is it available here at City Hall? Is it available down here when people come into our board meetings? And are we talking about it? Because actually, for as long as this survey has been up, I'm really disappointed in the amount of numbers.
I agree.
Six is not that many.
I wholeheartedly agree.
And if y'all had a lot of money budgeted for this group to come in to work on the master plan, and I know they didn't use as much as was budgeted, use that other money that's budgeted that isn't going toward them to put up signs. I'll put a sign in my yard. I know I live out in a low-density area, but I know a lot of people who would, up Fergus Road and through Lake Forest and,
Up at the parks, all of,
And I'm not being negative at all, but I'm being realistic, but it seems like a lot of people like to talk about things that we don't have or what we need or have you, but they don't want to go that extra effort to try and help get them with filling out surveys, coming to meetings and things like that.
and we,
That's been going on for at least 15 years.
I know, I'm just,
you've got about 11 people here who'll get in their faces and encourage them. I will.
I'm not smart enough to do that, but I would like to see us in the center here before I'm gone.
You ain't going nowhere, Mr. Bob. You're gonna stay around and torment us forever.
I hope so.
I hope so too. All right, any more questions?
If I hit the lottery, then it's gonna go up.
Build that senior center, build that community center.
put his name on it.
All right, with that being said, I call this portion adjourned.